Hello, and welcome back to Common Sense for Uncommon Times. I'm Robin, and today we're going to go into discussing housing. But before we do, in fact, quite honestly, I had already completed another video to cover housing, but with so many different things that have happened in the last 4 days, I thought maybe we better redo it just a touch. So, we will cover housing. Hopefully, you've already started those pantries that we discussed. That's going to be very important, and you'll hear why shortly. First, though, let's go ahead and cover some of the things that occurred this week that we had actually discussed could occur. The first thing is, of course, all the migrant bills that were passed, or executive orders that were signed. These have a tremendous impact on our food, as we discussed before. And what we're seeing actually already is that migrant workers are not going to work. They're not sending their children to school, and they're just trying not to get ran in by ICE. Right now in California, it's time to harvest oranges. And we're actually, let me see, I believe we're the largest producer of oranges, but let me verify that. But it's actually time to pick the oranges. And if there's no one there to pick them, then there's either no oranges, or the few oranges that there are will be extremely expensive. There will not be oranges for orange juice, or if you manage to find some, it's going to be beyond what most people can afford. And that's just the beginning. It's almost planting season here in California, and if we don't have the farm workers to plant, then we also don't have a harvest. California produces 20% of the food for this country. 20% is a lot to lose. Obviously, the amount of food that's needed to keep Californians going is going to stay in California. So what you may find is that it's even, there's even less than the 20%. I mean, there's even more than the 20% reduction. So this is a major concern as far as for food, a food crisis. So those pantries that we discussed earlier, those are really, really important. If you have a little scrap of land, doesn't matter how big, it could be your flower garden. I would plant whatever vegetables you can plant. If you have a spot for some, fruit trees, get some that are already, they won't really be fully producing because that would be a big tree, but, get some of those little dwarfs that are, near producing. I think they're called bare roots or something. Get those in the ground, because I do believe this is going to be a major problem. Okay, let's see. Yeah, California actually produces the most oranges. Florida produces the most orange juice. However, if these orchards are not picked because of lack of workers, Florida's oranges will probably be split between table oranges and juice oranges. Yeah, so don't expect to have very many of those this year. And what there is will be extremely expensive. So that's one of the things that's happened, and it happened because the order was put out that ICE was to begin raids, and specific states were named to start. However, this will be a nationwide event, so that's not good. So that's the first thing. That's going to affect our food supplies. Not only the actual supplies, but the cost of the food. Because remember, migrants don't just plant and pick. They also take care of the livestock. So there's your meat. They take care at the hatcheries for chickens. They take care of pretty much everything agricultural. Not to mention other jobs that they are also in. So if you're planning vacation, you might find that service will be lacking, because this is affecting all businesses, especially on the service side, like hotels, motels, that sort of thing. So you're not going to be seeing a lot of that. And it's going to be a lot more difficult. Now, another thing that was mentioned this week was tariffs. We talked kind of at length regarding the tariffs. I was under the assumption that the tariffs would be set at 10% if they were put in place at all. Of course, China already has a tariff, so any tariff put on them would be on top of one that's already existing. For Canada and China, actually, the tariff is being placed at 25%. So what does this affect? Well, number one, it starts a trade war. So we have that problem. What it affects immediately is our lumber supplies, since the majority of our lumber comes from Canada. On the China side, it affects everything. Pretty much everything in your house is from China. So, yeah, even auto parts, stuff like this, excuse me, will be affected. Parts for production plants, gas stations, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's China. So that's going to increase costs across the board on everything. Absolutely everything. And of course, it's going to start a trade war. So, where we have products that we export to Canada and China, they will in turn slap tariffs on ours, which will make their citizens not want to purchase our products. So that's going to actually put a lot of businesses out of business. This happened really, really fast, all of this. Also, another thing that I do not believe we talked about, because I was a little bit blindsided by this, was President Biden actually put into place a pharmacy price reduction to where certain pharmaceuticals could not be overly charged to the patient. And this was a great thing, because in some areas, insulin was at $1,500, and it went down everywhere to a flat $35, period. It affected a lot of medications, most of the medications across the board. That has been rescinded already. It's the one med that I was kind of keeping track of. Already in a short, what's it been? 4 days, almost 5 days, I guess. Insulin has risen from $35 to $600 plus. So that's going to be a concern as medications go on the rise. Then especially our seniors are going to be hit the hardest with that. Another move that was made is an attempt to end birthright citizenship, and I don't think this can happen because this is guaranteed in the 14th Amendment. However, there had been discussion of the Constitution just being set aside and not being followed at all. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that, and I'm not really sure who all it's going to affect. I do know that when I went to the post office the other day, the most heart-wrenching thing I think I have ever seen was there was a young man and woman. The man spoke extremely good English, so he obviously has been here a long time, probably came over as a child with his parents. They were getting passports for their children, and they were distraught because it was going to take 4 to 6 weeks for the passports to come back, and they wanted to go now. The reason is that they are fearful of being separated, because that is what's being threatened, is that as these families are rounded up, they're going to take the children, separate them from the parents. Nobody wants that. It was a fiasco the last time it was done. Children went missing. It just wasn't good. Children were being kept in cages. I mean, So, anyways, that was one of the things I've seen already. Also, in my area, there was a citizen, a Hispanic citizen, born and raised here. Not someone that just crossed the border or anything like that. Not that this would make it any better. But her children were at a park and were accosted by an elderly Caucasian woman who then began yelling racial slurs at them. And these are children. Why would we do that? Why are we turning on children? I don't get it. And I'm heartbroken. So, that covers briefly some of that. Also, kind of along those lines, they did bar asylum for people arriving at the southern border, which we've always had asylum program. They're also suspending the refugee admissions program, and that's going to be until it supposedly aligns with the interests of the United States, which we were built on refugees, immigrants, and asylum seekers. So there's that. Let's see. Another one affects the LGBTQ community. They terminated the DEI programs across the federal government. Our country now only recognizes two sexes, male and female, and that is not just saying that that's what they recognize, but if you were born male but identify female, you're not. You don't. You're male. Period. So there's no programs for that, or will not be any programs for that. They also remove protections for transgender people in the federal prisons. So if you're transgendered and you are female, you will go to a male prison rather than to a female prison if you're transgendered female. And same vice versa. If you're transgendered male, you go to the female prison. Let's see. For some reason, they're checking into something called External Revenue Service, which they think they're going to collect our taxes from tariffs and duties. But if we're in a trade war, that's not really going to work now, is it? We also withdrew again from the Paris Climate Agreement, even though right now we're in an obvious climate crisis. They declared a national energy emergency, which I don't understand this, because right now we're pumping more oil than we ever have. Biden really had everything pumping, and we have more than enough. We're not in a shortage. We're not in a gas shortage. We're fine. We even have reserves, so I'm not really sure. But by doing this, they were able to. My dog's trying to jump up on the recliner. I'm sorry for all the noise. By doing this, they're actually opening Alaska protected areas up for drilling. And they plan to do that in a lot of our national forests. They plan to start massive logging in our national forests again, in an attempt to make up for the lumber that we'll lose from Canada. So there's that. And they are also attempting to reverse President Biden's ban on offshore drilling for 625 million acres of federal waters. We haven't had real good luck with offshore drilling. We tend to destroy our ecology when we do that because of oil spills and what have you. And they're also beginning the repeal of the Biden-era regulations on tailpipe pollution from cars and light trucks. This actually had encouraged automakers to manufacture more electric vehicles, so we were headed in the right direction. Not that everybody has to own an electric vehicle, but 50% of America owns one. Our climate issues would be significantly affected for the better. Let's see. Already said open the Alaska wilderness to more oil and gas drilling. He wants to start reviews of new export terminals for liquefied natural gas. That had been paused so that we could keep our natural gas here. And there has also been an elimination of the environmental justice programs across the government, which are aimed at protecting poor communities from excess pollution. So we're going to go back into those poor communities and pollute the water and their air again. And let's see. We withdrew from the World Health Organization while a new disease has been identified in China and there is an outbreak. And so far, I haven't heard the word pandemic yet, but if we don't even belong to the World Health Organization, we will probably not be too much in the know on what's happening in those types of things until it actually hits us. And let's see. Signed a executive order making sure that any state that has the death penalty has a sufficient supply of lethal injection drugs. And let's see. Is revoking security clearance for 50 people in government who signed a letter suggesting the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop could be Russian disinformation, which, I guess if you don't like the truth, then, that's what happens. Now, another thing that occurred, that it is being discussed to terminate FEMA altogether and just have the states deal with their own disasters. Now, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris actually had set aside, what is it, $200 some odd billion, I believe, for that last big hurricane that struck Florida and North Carolina and Tennessee. Whether or not that money actually goes there now, I don't know. So it very well may not. States such as California, who sends the most federal taxes than any other state, actually would be fine just by keeping their federal taxes. The money that we send in federally basically goes to help the red states, the states that do not have that much income, that do not have that much help. But if we're going to have to start taking care of our own, our governor has said he'll just keep the taxes here to take care of our own. So this is really going to get ugly, and it's really getting ugly quick, a lot faster than what I thought. So let's move on to housing. This is going to be quick because the thing is, with all this stuff going on, this is going to affect the stock market, and it is going to affect the housing market. Already we're seeing house prices go down in areas like San Francisco and in other states. As these housing prices go down, a lot of people will be upside down, as we mentioned before, in their mortgages, and that's not a good thing. Plus, we're going to be seeing a lot of job loss. And the people that lose their jobs, they're just either unable or unwilling to work out in the field. So that's not going to be a solution to get them working in the fields to keep our food up. It's just not an option for the way our country is used to running. So here's some things that you need to look at. Okay. If you lost your job tomorrow, how would you pay your mortgage if you have a mortgage? And if you don't have a mortgage, how would you pay your rent? You can't rely wholeheartedly on unemployment, because unemployment is at least partially funded by the federal government. Federal government actually sets, how much you get and that sort of thing. So that may be by the wayside. I mean, so many things are being just cut out that could very well be by the wayside. So you can't count on that. You can't count on, if you're injured, disability insurance, if your state has disability insurance. Can't count on it. Quite honestly, at this point, we can't even count on our Social Security. Because there's talk about large cuts to the Social Security that we paid into our entire lives. Cuts to that, cuts to Medicare. They'd like to throw millions of people off of Medicaid and SNAP, which is food stamps. So there's a lot of things you can't count on. You can't count on getting assistance if you need it. So what are you going to do? Well, a lot of other people are going to be in that boat too, and they're going to be looking for some place to live. So if you own your house and you have a spare bedroom or two, start thinking about how you could rent those out and to whom you could rent those out. A good avenue to look at would be college students. College students are always looking for a room to rent. Typically, if they're not joining a fraternity or something like that, then it's just going to be a single, an individual college student looking for a room. If you have a couple of rooms, that's great, because then you can get a couple of them in there. What you do need to consider, though, is that you really need to have good ground rules and stick to them. Not meanly. I don't mean, be the overall boss or what have you. But you need to have ground rules and you need to stick to them. So, and you would also need to have a good rental agreement. So it's very specific what you will allow and what you will not allow in the home. Does the renter have to buy their own food, or are you doing room and board? These kind of things. You have to be very specific. That way you make sure that, you've covered your bases. Even times, no one coming home after a certain time, if that's something that bothers you, these kind of things. So very specific and a very good rental agreement. So that way there's no misunderstandings. There's no, if you're explaining it straight up, up front, then if it's not something that they agree to, then they can go find another place. So it's okay, because what you have to think about is being able to still continue your life and your comfort as you're used to, while at the same time renting a room or two out to someone else. Okay? So very important. If you rent, you might want to start thinking about who would you have as a roommate. Or if you wanted to get a roommate, where would you look for a roommate? And I'd look the same thing. College students are always great. And then you want to do the same thing too. Set your boundaries, what you will accept. Your landlord will actually handle the rental agreement. So, but you can set up an agreement as far as, what the rules of the house are. So that way everybody knows up front, everybody can live comfortably, and there's no conflicts or anything. So very important. This will help you pay your bills. This will help you pay your bills. If that is not doable, then you need to start considering if you have family members or friends that you can live with, or at least stay with for a time. And if you do, great. Talk to them ahead of time. Say, you know what? If things happen, is this something that we would be able to do? Got to start planning ahead. Could be, though, that they end up in a mess too, and they're going to need a place to stay. So you really need to kind of fill out what's going on in the lives of the people that you know, friends and family. The other thing is, if you happen to have an RV, be it trailer, a camper, a fifth wheel, a motorhome, a lot of people are selling them. Do not sell it. That is a home, and that is a home that you could use should you need to. It's also great so that if there's a natural disaster and you don't have access to gas, and electricity to run your stove to cook meals, as long as you've got your propane or your solar charged up, you can cook. You have another kitchen. You also have another bathroom as long as you've kept your tanks full. And you can just take it, go to one of the dump stations. There's plenty of them around. Go to one of the dump stations and dump and bring it back. So I am just stunned at the number of RVs I see for sale. I think because people are getting worried financially, but and they're going cheap. They're going very cheap, which is shocking as well. So if you do have one, that should not be your first thing to sell, because it's actually an asset. It's not a luxury. Don't view it as something for vacation that you might not be able to take. View it as a roof, because it would be a roof over your head. Now, there's a lot of videos on YouTube about how to live in vans, campers, trailers, RVs, what have you, and even places that you can go to where 7 months out of the year you won't have to pay much. I think it's like $600 or $800 on BLM land to stay 7 months. So, around $100 a month. And in some areas it's absolutely free, but there's limitations on how long you can stay. So you'd have to move periodically. But I would definitely check those out if that would be an option for you. Also, kind of start keeping your eyes open on the trailer parks as well. Only thing I'm concerned with on that is that seems to be the new thing for these investors to buy up, and people are finding when they do not have the money to move their trailer, their mobile home, they're finding that they're being shoved out of their park. So I'd be very wary of that one. I've seen a lot of that in the news lately. But it seems like the investors have their eyes on these to turn them into something else. So be careful on that one, but definitely something to look at. Let's see. I know I'm going through this really fast. The reason is that this is all happening a lot faster than I thought it would. I knew it was going to happen. I just knew it in my heart, but I thought there would be a little bit more time before everything just started flying like this, before everything started getting impacted at the same time. But that's what we're seeing. So we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared for job loss, but hope that we keep our job. Hope that's not a problem. We have to be prepared for food shortages. We have to be prepared for superstorms from climate change and them getting worse as our climate gets worse, or as our ecology gets worse. And we have to be very prepared for additional pandemics, because it looks like we will not be tracking the types of diseases and stuff that can easily come in and wipe out a good chunk of our citizenship, our citizens. Yeah. So I think in a very brief period here, I've covered a lot. Now it's up to you to get on your computer and go start researching what we've talked about as far as housing, as far as the nomad lifestyle. You could just type in nomad on YouTube, and that will bring up all the van life and motorhome life and all of that stuff. I'll bring it all up, and they can kind of go over things with you further as far as what you need, what you don't need, places you can go, most common places, these types of things. So, because you definitely don't want to be trying to just sleep on a side street, because it doesn't work. You could lose your rig, you could lose your house, so that doesn't work. So you really need to delve into this, get some good information on that if that's an option for you. And then also really research, look up, Google roommate agreements and find out what other people have put in their agreements, that sort of thing. Or room for rent agreements, find out what they put into it, and then, check for your state, because a lot of times you can get standard rental agreements for your state or your area that will cover what you need it to cover, and then you can just add in any additional items, and you can check to make sure that the items that you're adding in are covered by law. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I'm sorry it was so fast. I hope I gave you enough information to start. The next one I'm going to be covering health and security, and that's going to be extremely important, because if things start getting really bad, security is going to be an issue for all of us, and hospitals may be overrun, so we need to be able to take care of ourselves as much as we can, and what kind of items you can get to keep on hand at home that you would be able to use to take care of some of the smaller things that you might go to the emergency room for, but can actually be handled at home. So I'll get working on that one, and keep your eyes open, keep listening to what's being signed and what's being done, because it's impacting all of us. And you know what? This type of thing does not see red or blue, does not recognize conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat. This will affect us all. And in some cases, it will affect some of us worse than others. Some states worse than others. So be aware. Don't just take for granted what you're being told on cable news. Be aware. Do your research. And on that, I wish you luck. Please like, subscribe, share. Share these videos. Get these out there to as many people as you can. Not because I want the views, but because I want people to know what they need to do to at least prepare. I don't want to see people starving, homeless. I don't want to see these kind of things. We already have a homeless crisis. We don't want it to get worse. So definitely like, subscribe, share, comment. If you have some ideas to share with everyone of what else can be done, please do that. Please share. And remember, this is not a political issue. This is a human issue, and it affects us all. You take care, and I do wish you all well. Till the next time.